Now, I remember very fondly the days when David Icke was the only crazy guy around. He was everybody's crazy guy. And now he seems so innocent, so pure amongst all the sort of post-truth conspiracy nonsense that's happening now. Nowadays, it's a complete whack-a-mole game, isn't it? Trying to keep them down. They pop up everywhere. And here I'm actually going to talk about not the general situation because we're all invested in that, but in a personal game of whack-a-mole that I've been playing with my own friends. I've bopped them all on the head and there's now, I don't think there's anybody left. They've all gone one by one. Yeah, so was it before COVID that everything was kind of holding together in a strange kind of way? And do you think COVID was the accelerant? Because pre-COVID, we had David Icke, the royal family of lizards. There is a conspiracy to kind of rule the world. And then subsequent to COVID, almost everybody, including my own friends, one by one, fell by the wayside and became, can I use the word idiots, or is that too harsh? Loonies, which is slang for kind of lunatics. I don't know what the right word is. I think I'm tempted to say idiots because although the definition actually of somebody who is mentally ill is somebody who's lost touch with reality. Now, in this post-truth world, of course, we don't really know where we stand as far as reality is concerned, do we? Because we're being gaslit at the moment. And so it's very hard to keep our feet on the ground and to remain convicted to a kind of shared concept of reality. But let's pretend that we can sort of accept that there is still such a thing as reality, because, nobody decides Nobody decides what reality is really, do they? I mean, it is a thing, it's a phenomena in itself. But nowadays we sort of can decide what is and what isn't reality. Now, the great days of David Icke, it was so wonderful, so innocent. It was wonderful times. And of course now it's got really deeply worrying and unpleasant. So, yeah, I know what's going on out there, and I know that people are playing whack-a-mole now with their with what's going on. I mean, trying to keep the craziness at bay, one by one, and they keep popping back up again, and it's becoming overwhelming. We're losing the game. We know that, but actually during COVID, I started having to play whack-a-mole with my friends, and I have now sort of beaten them all into submission, and they're all dead to me, which is, I guess it's a shame, because they were bright, intelligent, reasonable people. If they hadn't have been that, they wouldn't have been my friends through life. And these were all people who seemed to be completely sound in most respects. I mean, many of them were eccentrics, of course, that's absolutely fine. But none of them showed any signs of being susceptible to the hysteria, the plague that has now enveloped us all. Let's be honest about it. So, I mean, I don't really know where to start, but I mean, there are classic cases of people turning to religion, okay, and that's okay. Nothing unusual in that. Now, I'm not going to use their real names because I'm already in enough trouble. But let's say V, she became a born-again Christian and started going to sort of slightly evangelical meetings and that kind of thing. And it was very difficult henceforth to actually have a kind of real discussion with her. I remember a couple of things she said that worried me. One was that when she was going on about bloody God, she was talking about the fact that she was sort of explaining it to me, blah blah blah, boring. And I said, look, V, I don't want to get involved. As far as I can see, the world is full of pain, suffering. It's a deeply shocking and horrific experience in which you are alive for a brief time, you're ill for some of that time, and you basically lose everyone you love, and then you die for eternity. And I thought, I kind of don't know what kind of God, and I said that it's actually full of, just have a look at the newspaper, it's full of horror. And always has been since the dawn of time. And not just the horror of kind of, human horror of war, but even in the animal kingdom, it's a place that's merciless. So I went on like this, the usual argument. And of course, she said to me, well, that's nothing to do with God. I said, but God is the creator, isn't it? God is who created everything. I mean, so isn't he or she responsible for this? But apparently not, and she explained to me that the devil had come and the devil was doing this work. Now, at this point, it's rather like being at a party and the first going up to somebody and the first thing they say to you is, "What star sign are you?" And you just think, "Oh fuck, I mean, blah blah. I'm a Sagittarius. Who gives a damn?" I mean, if you're somebody who wants to define me or indeed anyone else by what star sign you are, then we've got problems already. So I'm afraid that was the end of that. And especially after she got involved with a bunch who were extremely pro-Israeli. And she ended up talking about the fact that the Palestinians have no right to live there because they are a nomadic people. And I thought, oh, I'm not going down this road, V. So I had to sort of back away. Relief. Whack. But then I had another good friend. Can I just call him H? Again, somebody who pre-COVID, although, shall we say, let me use that word again, eccentric, nothing wrong with that. He embraced during COVID the whole conspiracy thing completely. He took it into his soul. It became part of his personality. I wonder whether or not that he had lived most of his life, I don't know, somehow lost, somehow without a sense of belonging, sort of maybe struggling a little bit. And during that time, he found himself in some way through conspiracy. So he was doing the whole vaccine thing and he became completely obsessed about it. We're talking about 20, 30 Facebook posts a day, all of it absolute garbage from start to finish. And it wasn't just about vaccines. It spread. It was about Bill Gates being the devil incarnate on Earth. It was about 5G towers being what were they? Kind of sort of, I don't know, were they giving radiation poisoning to keep people placid? Something like that. I mean, it was all a bit crazy. And he went from being a software engineer almost overnight to becoming a sort of Reiki healer. And he set up, he lived in a tower block and he did a bit of training, if such a thing exists for Reiki healing, I don't know. And he set up a kind of private practice on the 9th floor of this tower block. It was quite a nice tower block. But he set it up on the 9th floor in a kind of back bedroom where the curtains were always drawn, and he had big posters of kind of mushrooms or something all around. I don't know why they were relevant. It was very dark in there, very dingy. And he put on this website and he started doing these YouTube videos about his Reiki clinic. And I thought, no one in their right minds. And he became very peculiar. And I thought nobody in their right minds would get into an elevator and go to the ninth floor, to go into some dingy back room with this very peculiar guy spouting all this nonsense. Well, anyway, so, of course, most of this fell apart, and he ended up, as far as I know, he ended up driving buses or something. So that was quite a shock. Never spoke to him again. I started trying to help him through it right at the beginning. So he would leave a sort of crazy post and I would just find the fact and just sort of plop it on in the comment section. This was the early days, the innocent days, where you kind of thought that there was going to be some kind of reasonable conversation between people about these things. Obviously there isn't now. Everything's changed. we live in a completely sort of post-truth world where we have forsaken reality, we've forsaken truth, we've forsaken the search for truth or even the interest in it. But these were the days where I still thought that I could kind of write a comment saying, well, actually, H, the truth is, X, Y, and Z. But he became very aggressive, and well, that was the end of that. Whack, gone. Now I've got there's 3 or 4 people left, I guess. So I'm not going to go through them all, but L, she was a graphic designer, lovely girl, perfectly harmless, you'd have thought. And again, during that COVID period, she started to very slowly kind of pick up some of these kind of stranger ideas that were kind of hovering around. The sort of things that pre-COVID sort of David Icke would spout, and people used to think, well, most people used to think he was a bit crazy. But during COVID, these things were becoming more and more popular ideas. So what was her thing? She was into chemtrails and stuff like that. And of course, nowadays, something like a chemtrail, seems kind of rather light-hearted, say compared to the Great Reset theory, or some of the other more extreme theories about sort of, democratic paedophilia and stuff like that, that have sort of come about. And I think I don't want to keep listing everybody anyway, whack to her. And then there was someone else also called V who she actually, I can't remember whether she called or messaged, but she said out of the blue, and this was during Black Lives Matter, she contacted me and she said, they're finding the bodies of hundreds of black men in the lakes in Mississippi. I said, what are you talking about? She was talking about these lynch mobs. She said, it started. The lynch mobs are killing the blacks and the lakes are full of bodies. I thought, well, this is weird. I don't know where she got it from. Or if she didn't invent it, but she kind of heard it through, this is when things were beginning to fragment and disintegrate. So she just the crap information, but why believe it? So instinctively, I just said, it's not true. Don't worry. She couldn't sleep. I said, just don't worry about it. It's not true. And she said, what, why? She said, how do you know? Are you in Mississippi? Like being sarcastic. And I said, well, no, but are you? And then she kind of disappeared for a few hours. And I got a message, I think, in the morning. She said, you're one of those people who believe everything you're told in the news? To which I gave her a normal answer. A considered answer. So I said, well, I don't necessarily believe everything I believe in the news, but there are certain news sources which are slightly more reliable than others, and there are certain newspapers that actually are very comprehensive about fact-checking. And there are, So I just gave her a kind of sensible answer in a way, but that wasn't enough. She never spoke to me again. I don't know. And by the way, there were no bodies in lakes. The whole thing was just completely made up. So the sickness has spread, and I mean, I don't know what's happened to David Icke, by the way. He's gone very, very quiet, hasn't he? I suppose that in a way he has been completely absorbed by the whole thing and sort of spat out somewhere. But, you know, I think we all know now that there's been a collapse totally in this sort of shared reality. And with that, one of the main things is, and this also explains some of the political shenanigans that's going on at the moment that we won't mention yet, which is a loss of trust in pretty much everything, in all the pillars and the institutions that kind of made civilization what it was in a way. So that's the institutions of education, science. You know, the idea that we can have experts, that we can have knowledge, and various other institutions, they are all now not under scrutiny, but they're actually being destroyed, and they're being destroyed for political reasons. Everything from, you know, the education system in America, obviously at the moment, and public service broadcasting, which is being absolutely ridiculed, often in favour of kind of absolute idiots like me on the YouTube, just talking as if we have some sort of special knowledge that thousands of BBC journalists and all the standards that they have to adhere to don't. But never mind, that's just another perversity. That's another gaslighting that's going on at the moment. So, you know, obviously I've thought, you know, what is it that makes people susceptible to conspiracy theories? Now, you're not allowed to call them idiots because they can actually be hyper-functional in many other ways. So that wouldn't be particularly fair. Look, I just want to think about these friends of mine and what happened to them, maybe, because, you know, these are enormous subjects that people are grappling with at the moment, and I don't want. There's no particular answer to these things, but at first I just want to talk generally and just introduce some of the things that I'm interested in or have written about. I wonder how much of it has got to do with, well, fear is involved, of course, and fear and paranoia are very closely associated. So well, that would be somewhere to start, perhaps. Also, I don't think people have a great sense of belonging and stability. And if you think about it, if you believe that you have access to a secret truth that another sort of close-knit community also believe in, then that is that also would satisfy an element of human psychology. And then, of course, just I'm being rather glib here, but there is also the psychological frailty of humankind, of humans anyway. We are very psychologically frail. You know, we can become hysterical quite easily. And by hysterical, I mean in the classic clinical sense, by which we kind of react to what's happening around us and absorb it, even though there's no evidence apart from some trigger in the mind. So a classic example would be in a school where one student is sick and someone else begins to feel that they might be a bit sick and they actually would physically vomit, and then you can have 5 or 6 people in the class actually feeling sick, actually some of them vomiting, but all of it's made up in their minds. It was perhaps only the initial person who was actually sick, who'd actually got the food poisoning, if you like. Yeah, so there are some interesting ideas that I think I'll talk about, you know, when I break everything down and try and I'm not looking for patterns. I'm not going to do a Jordan Peterson who thinks he's got the answer to everything. when in fact he has the answer to absolutely nothing at all. He's just an apophenic, Jordan Peterson. I mean, he's a classic apophenic. He's determined to find kind of the answers to things that he doesn't really understand, and that because he's an intellectual guy, and that kind of must frustrate him a great deal. This is why he's concerned with, you know, the great ideas of order and chaos and bringing these into social analysis and that kind of thing. He basically, an apophenic is somebody who will take something that's very, very complicated and will try and form it into a kind of nice pattern, and then that kind of is able to express that in a simple way. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that road. I don't think I think that the answers here are obviously very complex, but I think the underlying pattern is that it's a kind of the psychological human frailty that's, I think, at the heart of it. And that combined with technology, which has exacerbated that human frailty, is probably somewhere at the heart of it. But, you know, for example, and I'm now ranting a bit, but for example, it was Freud said that civilization is built on the renunciation of instinct. In other words, to build a civilization, and we've all known since Plato and Aristotle and all Socrates, we know what a good civilization should look like. You know, it's not complicated. We haven't managed to do it. That's because we're incapable of doing it. We've had 2,500 years to have a go, and it's failed by and large. Yes, we've invented antibiotics, but that's not enough. You know, we're still killing hundreds of millions every century. Anyway, you know, we still allow our animal instincts to in a way betray those old ideas of what a good society was. Animal instincts like sort of lust, greed, power, all that stuff. So what do they mean by civilization is built on a renunciation, or basically getting rid of our instincts? Well, you know, there are two sides to this. There's our basic physical animal instincts, okay, which is, you know, to get what we want when we want. We've had to renunciate those. We have to get rid of those in order to have a decent society, and we can overcome those mentally. We're intelligent beings, and we can kind of negotiate around all of those. And then there's also our moral instinct. Well, I don't even know whether we have a moral instinct. I mean, wasn't it Aleister Crowley who said that? What did he say? He said. He said, do what thou wilt. That is the whole of the law. What was he saying there? He was saying, well, morality is just another construct. And so, yeah, we've had to overcome much of our moral, psychological, physical instincts in order to build this society. And this is what woke's all about, clearly. Sorry, not woke, anti-woke. So the anti-woke movement, if you like, is not trying to take us forward into a better place, but to take us back into a primitive place, which is extremely suitable and comfortable for certain types of people. But not for everybody, as you can imagine. You don't have to go back far in time, and either you were a big bird and you had everything you wanted, or you were a small bird and you were in the shit. So, I don't know, what I would say to all these people who are kind of thinking of going down that rabbit hole is, I would say, just before you just before you slide down the rabbit hole, you don't have to think something, you don't have to believe something. Okay, you can actually believe in nothing. You can actually acknowledge the fact that you are not qualified really to make grand statements about these things. And so you can say to yourself, rather than go down the rabbit hole and, for example, believe that Wikipedia is a CIA attempt to kind of capture knowledge and control knowledge, rather than go down into that little rabbit hole, why don't you actually decide to believe in nothing? What's wrong with believing in nothing? It's a very safe, stable place to be. I mean, it's called the science of no mind. Very old Buddhist idea. Let the mind be empty. Let other people make the noise. Now, I know I'm making noise on YouTube, right? But everybody's making noise on YouTube. That's what we do now. There is nothing else to do but this, unfortunately. Yeah, it's rather than believe in something out of fear or paranoia, believe in absolutely nothing. What's wrong with that? I mean, if you're thinking, for example, if you're thinking the birds are actually little surveillance machines, if that thought's coming into your mind, that all the birds are actually little surveillance machines, instead of overthinking that and thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't believe that, just believe in nothing. I see a bird. I don't know whether it's a living thing or whether it's a machine that's surveying me. I think I'll just believe in nothing. Surely that's better than just going down and believing that birds, I don't know. Or if you think the earth is flat, just let it go. Believe in nothing. Nothingness. It's safe there. You do not have to believe in anything. Now, my dog sitting here doesn't believe in very much. I would say that in the way that we kind of have our weird beliefs, she doesn't have any of those whatsoever. And she does seem healthier mentally than all of my mad friends who have completely lost it for reasons that I don't know exactly why. I mean, I've given you some ideas and I'll think about that further. And I've had to whack them on the head one by one as they pop up until there are none left.